build the 2021 Landspeeder while comparing it to the 1999 Landspeeder. The 1999 Landspeeder is interesting in that it was actually one of the first licensed Lego sets, as well as the first Star Wars Lego sets by default, and it occurred around the time of the release of the Phantom Menace. So the Phantom Menace got Lego to buy a license for Star Wars. Not only did they produce Phantom Menace sets, but they also produced about 5 classic sets as their first run, and this was part of their first set of sets. And the other interesting thing is that even with the Star Wars license, by 2003, Lego was actually struggling and losing a lot of money. They were privately owned, so it just meant that the family that owns it, the descendants of the original Lego founder, were losing money, but it probably wasn't sustainable. They were probably going to have to fold as a business, even though they had the Star Wars license. So that's kind of interesting that this couldn't pull them out. But for the time, it was amazing that you were getting licensed versions of the Star Wars sets that any child in the late 1970s that had Lego was probably trying to build these vehicles, and now you're getting licensed versions of them. You can already see a few differences. The set from 1999 is a 49-piece set compared with 236 pieces for the new set, so that gives you a lot more options. You've seen that they've added a little bit of a diorama, they've added a minifigure, there's better engines on the back. Also interestingly, the colors are much better. They chose tan for the original one. I know that there was, in part of their cost cutting or cost rationalization, they wanted to reduce their palette of colors. So maybe they just didn't have that color at the time, or they hadn't included it in their palette. They were up to like over 100 different colors, some of which weren't used very often at one point, and now they're down to 51. Obviously, this is the 2021 is probably part of those 51, and a much better choice. Also, this set is dead simple, like the 49-piece, nothing too fancy. All the pieces already existed. The windshield was even in classic space, although trans yellow. These were in classic space sets. The engines, all sort of just really simple pieces, a plate on the bottom and the 2 minifigures. In this case, they chose Obi-Wan and Luke. In the other set, they chose Luke and C-3PO, and then a Jawa as part of the extras on the set. So I'm just going to go ahead and open up the set and start to build it. And we'll sort of look at things as they go. So here's the instruction booklet. And the piece bags are numbered 1 through 3, so that will make it a bit easier, I hope, to build it. Yeah, so you've got the one that builds 2 minifigs, and you don't get Luke until the 3rd bag, after the Landspeeder is mostly built. So let's start with bag 1. And put together the minifigures first. Oh, and also note this is a much nicer color for C-3PO than the original one. In the original sets, he was not in this Landspeeder set, but he was in other sets, and he was kind of like this pearly, goldish color. Now this looks a lot more like actual gold, which is really nice. And also, Jawas were quite rare for a while. I think they mostly occurred in the Jawa Sandcrawler set. I found there's one other set that had a few of them in it, which I think I bought at some point in time. But nice to include a figure that's not super common in this set. So those are the 2 figures so far. And it looks like we build the diorama first. So, which its base is this. So we have a nice little cave for the Jawa to hide in. Perfect little spot. Got his blaster on the wall, a little bit of shrubbery, and nice little sandy cave. So that's kind of cool. Now we start on building the Landspeeder with the remaining parts in bag 1. Just like to point out at this point, they're using lots of sideways building pieces that allow you, like lots of specialty pieces. There's not a lot in here. We'll look at this later, how they did this sideways. It's not super fancy. These are using lots of fancy bricks that allow you to change the stud direction. This one in particular, and this one as well. So that's kind of an interesting difference. There's lots more options now for doing this sort of stuff. And that's it. There's the final new Landspeeder. Contrast that with the old. It's much bigger, much better colors. The engines are much more detailed. I said that we were gonna just look at the sideways building. This one just used all sorts of fancy sideways building pieces. The new one, there's lots of stickers here. They sort of actually use bricks to give the feel of ridging. Here there's actually stickers that go along here. I haven't put those on yet, but I will. You know, these actually built some nice seat backs, whereas this just used the standard seat. The sideways building on this was just a simple, you know, just the simple pin with this piece on top. Nothing too fancy there. Yeah, so there is another seat in there. It just came off with this guy. You know, so this one, using all sorts of super fancy techniques, all sorts of more realistic colors. You know, it's better all the way around, I would say, because it's but you know, that you would expect that with 20 years of development that would happen, right? So here's the stickers I haven't put on yet. Some of them wrap around the engine elements here. As I said, though, there's the grille on the front, and there's also the display panel in here gets one, and yeah, that's mostly it. I will put those on later. I think an interesting look at how minifigures have evolved would just be to compare the two Lukes. You know, the hair is this is just standard minifigure hair for the time, just colored blonde. You know, this actually looks like it might have been made especially for Luke. A little bit of minifigure clothing they had at the time, but they didn't, you know, they didn't put it in. That's a nice little added touch with the little fabric thing that he had. The torsos, you know, much The new one looks better, but it's like, doesn't look like the printing's gotten that much more fantastic. They had leg printing back then as well, which they used for his legs, which is really cool. Back then they had the yellow minifig heads. Now they have flesh tone. And they had already gone beyond the smiley face expression, but the Luke in this case is much more expressive. No back printing. This one has a nice back printing for the belt on that set. So you can just see how in 20 years they've just figured out how to make minifigures look way better. Yeah. And I guess the other thing is they use just the tan, which I think we talked about before. Now they've used just colors that are just so much more realistic. So all in all, super nice set. Really nice build. With the bonus of the diorama. And and I'll say I'm not a fan of stickers. I'd rather them just be printed pieces, but they do make the sets look better. So there you have it. 1999 Landspeeder versus 2021 Landspeeder. Let me know what you think in the comments below, which one you like better. Thank you very much for watching.